There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is our weekly live stream, which is a Q&A session where I answer your questions, anything related to careers, resumes, job interviews, discovering jobs, salary negotiation, any of that stuff. If you are watching this right now, get in the chat. There you should see a chat box and let me know what your question is, and I will do my best to answer it and hopefully help you out. Oh yeah, there's usually a bunch of intro stuff that I do. Of course, I don't have that with me, but yeah, special thanks to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, and my super thanks donors. You guys are awesome. Thank you for the support. And if you were here earlier this morning, for my other live stream on side hustles, you know how dark it was. It was like pitch black outside. What a difference an hour makes. Now it's bright sunshine. Incredible. It was a really miserable morning, and now it's looking up. So that's great. But yeah, if you are between jobs right now, and you are looking for something, or you are wanting to improve yourself and sort of master the world of employment and that kind of thing, you have come to the right place. I will do my best to help you out. Yeah, something that doesn't really come up on this channel as much as you would think. I've never actually worked as a recruiter. I've been a hiring manager, and I've hired lots of people, and I've hired recruiters and recruiting companies to do stuff for me. But I have a bit of a different perspective on employment, certainly from other YouTube channels. A lot of YouTube channels that talk about this kind of stuff are done by recruiters. And there's some great recruiters out there. They know their stuff, but it's, there's more to this than sort of the world of recruiters. So, yeah. So the award for the first person in the chat today goes to Eugene. And for the first time ever, now that I say that, it's disappeared. Okay. So I see that's still on the screen up here. So it says, hello, how many scenarios should I prepare for a 1-hour Zoom interview? Oh, it's back. It's back. Maybe you wanted to rephrase it. How many scenarios should I prepare for 1-hour Zoom interview, 1-hour Zoom's interviews with 2 hiring managers? What do you mean by scenarios? Are you talking about behavioral-based questions and you're trying to, have an answer ready for any kind of behavioral-based interview question? For those that don't know, behavioral questions those are the questions when they ask, it usually starts off with, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time you did this or you did that, right? So if that's, I'm just going to answer assuming that's what you're talking about. What I would say is do between 5 and 10, preferably 10, okay? And what you do is, these are stories from your past, like what you did on the job, okay? Now, if you're going for your first career job and you don't have any work experience, like professionally, these will have to come from your university time or college time or trade school time or post-secondary education time or whatever education you have. If you are right out of high school, this will have to come out of, your experience will have to come out of high school. Okay. But what I'd recommend is that you prepare 10 stories, okay, that you've done. So for example, they gave you a challenge. Your boss said, I need you to do this. And you didn't know how to do it. There was some kind of challenge. You figured out how to do it. You did it. It worked out well. Your boss was very impressed, and maybe they promoted you because of it. Something like that. That would be a good example of a story, right? So what you do is you find 10 of these, okay, situations where, you had to overcome a challenge. Maybe there was a conflict between you and somebody else, maybe between you and your boss, you and a coworker, any kind of shining moment you've had where you did something really well and you want to say, this is an example of, what I've done, because it paints you in a good light. Anything like that. Think of stories like that. Think of about 10. Now, you're going to want to vet them because one of the criteria is that if you had to do it again, you would do exactly the same thing again. You're not telling a story about, oh, I did it this way, but I have since learned that that's not the best way to do it. And if I were to do it today, I would do it differently, right? Okay, so you're going to want to vet them. Then you practice saying them in the STAR format. So STAR, so situation, task, action, result. It's just a very compact way to tell a story. So you can tell a story in like literally 30 seconds and it's complete. It makes sense, right? It doesn't take up the whole interview. And, and then rehearse them a couple of times. So you're not like you're doing a better job telling it than I'm doing right now, stumbling over my own words and thinking what I'm going to say next. You've got it prepared. You've rehearsed it a few times. So it's in your mind. And then you do the whole point of doing this is that when you go to a job interview, if they ask you any kind of question that starts with, tell me about a time, tell me about a time you had to overcome a challenge. Tell me about a time you had an issue with your boss. Tell me about a time, you had to think creatively to accomplish a task or, accomplish a goal. Any kind of question like that, you're going to pull out one of these 10 stories, the one that it fits the most, and you're going to adapt that story to answer their question. That way, there's nothing they could ask you that, you would be stumped and you wouldn't know what to say, right? You always have an answer ready, okay? So if you're asking about that, behavioral questions, I would say prepare about 10, okay? And then no matter what they ask you, you should be able to say something, okay? Something that speaks to it. Jim Hansen is here. Hello, how does one answer the unique questions below? What do you dislike about your best job? And what do you dislike about your worst job? Okay, here's the deal. This is a very slimy, underhanded question because what I say in a lot of my videos is true. What they're trying to do in job interviews is they're trying to get the dirt on you. Okay, they don't want to know your sales pitch because you're going to make yourself out to be this awesome person, right? Great candidate, best employee ever. What they're trying to do is they're trying to peel back the curtain and see what are the skeletons in your closet? What are your failures? What are things that are bad about you? That's what they're trying to do. So what better way? I mean, it's like the opposite of subtle, right? It's just on the nose. What better way of doing that than saying, so what's bad about you? What don't you like about this job? What don't you like about this type of work, right? They think they're so clever doing this, okay? Here's what's going on here. Don't ever say anything bad about your previous employers, your previous boss, and anything in general in an interview, because the moment you do that, that's what they're going to use to eliminate you. Because if you said something like, well, the work was fine in my last job, but my boss was kind of a jerk. Sometimes he could be a jerk, something like that. Now, maybe you're being honest, but what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, this candidate doesn't like authority. If we hire them, they won't work well with their boss. They don't like people telling them what to do. They're going to be a problem employee. They're going to be argumentative. They're going to be insubordinate, right? So this is their subtle plan of trying to get you to hang yourself. They're giving you rope for you to hang yourself. Okay, so don't fall into this trap. You might, if you're new at this, you might feel pressure to I better give them what they want. I better say something bad about, what was it? My best job and my worst job, right? So if I was asked this question, okay, somebody had me in a job interview and they asked me this question, what do you dislike about your best job and what do you dislike about your worst job? I would say, well, my best job was my previous job. So far, my best job was my previous job. And the reason it was my best job is because I didn't really dislike anything about it. The work was great. I thought the people were great. My boss was very understanding. And I really enjoyed working in that environment. I also found it, quite an educational experience too. And whenever they gave me something that was a little bit of a challenge, it required a bit more work or it required me to learn something I didn't know how to do, it was done in such a way that even though I had to work a bit, it actually was worth it because I learned something, something that I consider to be useful, the vast majority of the time. So yeah, there was nothing really in there that, I had a problem with. Now, my worst job was probably a job I did in high school, just on the side, maybe, it was my first work experience in my life. And, it's not that I disliked anything about it, just that I didn't know what to expect. It was the first job and, getting used to the conventions and the lingo and the expectations, because it was my first time having employment, it wasn't kind of what you had imagined. I mean, I don't remember any of the details because this is a while ago, but, it wasn't bad. It was just that, you didn't know what to expect. And so it doesn't turn out always like the way you would have guessed it would. But, it was fine. It turns out that it was just a regular job and there was nothing peculiar or, about it. So that would be my answer, right? So I'm not actually saying anything bad about anyone or anything. And what I am saying to answer the question is perfectly understandable, or at least I like to think it's perfectly understandable. It's reasonable, right? So that's how I would go about answering that. Shardul Pandit says, hello, my first interview with a tech company was great. They have invited me on-site interview with 4 panelists for 90 minutes. What should I expect in this interview? Okay, Shardul, here's what I would say. When somebody opens their thing by saying, my interview is great, this is what goes through my mind, okay? They're intentionally making you feel welcome, okay? And not to have like a suspicious mind or anything, because sometimes it's perfectly legitimate. But sometimes people do that. They use that as a tactic to get you to feel comfortable, to get you to feel like you're among your friends. And then you let down your guard a little. And then they can ask you some more candid, kind of casual kind of stuff. And that's when you screw up, right? Like, for example, the question we were just talking about, what do you dislike most about this? And what do you dislike most about that? If you're feeling comfortable, you feel like, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm really doing well. These people like me and this is, we're all friendly and everything. That's when you got to watch out, because sometimes they intentionally create that atmosphere, in order to get you to feel at ease so that then, they can ask you something and you don't have your guard up, right? A lot of second interviews are kind of like that, where they invite you back, right? You think like, hey, I'm doing good. They invited me back, I'm doing well so far. I hate, I always say doing good. It's doing well. I'm doing well. Superman does good. You do well. So that's the first thing I would say. And then when you said, what would I expect in this interview? Okay, without really knowing the situation, but you're telling me it's a tech company and you have 4 panelists. That tells me that no one person has the authority to hire you, to make the decision unilaterally. So they're looking for consensus. And usually that's typical of a larger organization where people don't have a lot of authority. They don't want to stick their neck out and it's not, if you get a situation where it's like 3 people say no, but the 4th one says yes, the 4th one's not going to stick their neck out and say, no, I believe this is a good employee. I know all you guys think they're not a good employee, but I want to go with this person and I will stake my reputation on it. Usually you don't see that, especially in big organizations. That's more small organizations, right? So this is telling me it's a sort of decision by committee. Everyone has to put in their recommendation and it will all be taken into account. And by definition, no one person is going to go against the crowd to champion any one candidate. I imagine you're going to be dealing with 4 people that have different backgrounds. Okay, so one person might be, if it's a tech company, I don't know, somebody might be a technical person. They might be a developer or technician, whatever we're talking about here. Another person might be a manager and another person might be an HR person, and then you might get somebody else, I don't know, an accountant or a second tech person or a second HR person, something like that. Maybe somebody's supervisor that is just there to just kind of see what's going on, see how things are going. Right? So that's what I expect. So what that means is that, when you do a panel interview, the ideal way of doing it is if you know each of the 4 people, who they are. So that, okay, like this person over here that you're talking to, they're the HR person. That person over there that you're talking to, they are the manager, and this person over here is the tech person, right? So if you know that going in, you can speak to each of those people and you can give them maybe what they're wanting to hear, like from their perspective. Okay. Because, for example, if you're wanting to hire if you're at a tech company and you're interviewing a developer, a manager, and an accountant, right? And the accountant asks you a question, you're probably not going to want to try and sell yourself on how passionate you are about the job to an accountant, right? That might work for the hiring manager, that might work for the recruiter, but that might not work for the accountant. And I'm just sort of playing stereotypes here, but okay. So a great way to do this is, like I mentioned before, if you have a business card, use it. If you don't have a business card, consider getting a business card. I don't know if you have time to do this. It costs like very little, and you could just get them printed up. A place that I've used before is Vistaprint. But any place will do this. And what you do is you just essentially put your name, your tagline, and your contact information on it. It's very simple. Now, the reason you do this, one of the reasons is when you walk into the room, you say, hey, you shake people's hands or, whatever you do. And then you take your business card out, you start giving out your business cards to these people. And what they do is that they then give you theirs. So great. You've got 4 business cards from these 4 people that you're going to be interviewing with. Put them on the table in front of you, arrange them so that, like that person there, that's Al, and you have Al's business card here. This person over here is Janice, and you've got her business card right here, and so on. So you can see, okay, Al is a mechanical engineer, Janice is an HR person, Brenda, which I've got her card here, she's a controller, like an accountant, and Derek over here, Derek is the senior manager of the entire division, right? The hiring manager's boss or something. Okay, so that helps you. So you know who you're talking to. That's something that can be very useful to do. Okay, Jim Hansen says, for like the second question, came late, sorry. What do you dislike about your worst job? For the second question, came in, sorry. Sorry, Jim, don't quite understand. I thought I answered your question. I got one question from you and I thought I answered it. Pearl, hello, Bill. How does one answer this question? Where do you see your career developing in the next 3 to 5 years? Okay, well, that's a thinly veiled version of saying, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I've done a video on that on my channel. Go watch the video. The video will give you a better answer than what I can give you here just off the top of my head. Okay? So go check that out. The very short version is that, they don't want someone who wants to be somewhere else. They want to hire someone who wants to be here doing this. Okay? That's the basic idea. Jordan Ward, Bill, I think I'm blocked or something. It's not working here either. I'm sorry, Jordan. Listen, as a last resort, if it's a big deal to you, put your question in an email, send it to me. Okay. Now, just so everybody knows, I don't normally take questions by email. Okay. I don't, but I'm making an exception because some people had problems. They're trying to ask me questions in the chat and the YouTube filter is filtering them out for whatever reason. So what I'll do is I can't give you an email reply. It's just too labor intensive to do that. But what I can do is next week of How to Get Hired, I will answer that question first. Okay. Joey Joe says, how to convince the manager who doesn't have a damn clue about anything to give you a pay rise? I think that's unanswerable. If they don't have a damn clue about anything, Maybe the only language they understand is violence. I don't know. You could do it the way the mob does it. I don't know. Why should you deserve a pay rise? Do you deserve a pay rise? How did you come to that conclusion? Let me know. Jordan Ward says, my stuff doesn't show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jordan. Okay, Joey Joe says he wants me to take care of the client and stuff, but haven't given a wage increment. So is he not already paying you? That's my question. Like, is it part of your job? So let me know. I have a question to throw out to you guys. How do you know you actually deserve more money? Some people do. Some people don't. How do you know which? How much money do you deserve? Right? They did studies on this. When they ask people, how much do you deserve? Do you think you're above average, or below average? And they found that 81% of people said, oh, I'm above average. They think they're above average. Now, the definition of average is that 50% of people will be above it, 50% of people will be below it, right? So we always have a much higher opinion of ourselves than other people do of us, right? No, I'm you can obviously tell. Okay, here. So Joey Joe says, because I make profit for the company more than anyone else. Okay, how did you come to that conclusion? Do you have proof? You see how I'm giving you a hard time? This is what your boss is thinking. Because having been a boss, I can tell you, everyone thinks they deserve more. Okay? The other part of it is that the boss doesn't if they had their way, they would pay all of their employees a lot more, right? I mean, if you pay someone very little, they're not going to be motivated. They're not going to care. They're not going to do a great job. They're going to be disgruntled. Their morale is going to be low, right? Would you like to be in charge of a bunch of people like that? Of course not. You would love all of the people who report to you to be paid $1 million a year, right? So then they'll be enthusiastic. And then whatever you say, they'll say, yes, sir. And then they'll do it and they'll try their best and they'll be really happy to be there and to do it. They'll never leave. They'll love you, that's what, generally speaking, this is what bosses want. It's not that they want people to be paid low. The problem is that certainly in large organizations, they're given a budget by their boss. And they said, you have to make this amount of money last. You got to make this little amount of money go around. So, if you give one person a raise, that means we're taking money out of money that you have for other things. Okay. So, this is what's actually going on behind the scenes, right? The other aspect of this, if one person, let's say you have 8 people that report to you, one person comes to you and says, I think I deserve a raise because I go above and beyond and I do all this. The problem is if you give that person a raise, then in all fairness, if another employee came to you and said, I want a raise, it's kind of weird to say to this employee, yeah, you can have a raise, but sorry, there's no money in the budget to give you a raise, right? So you have to do it all together or not at all, or else it's just unfair. And if you violate that, you get problems. As soon as one employee finds out that the other one got a raise and they didn't, then all hell breaks loose, right? So these are some of the things that are going on behind the scenes. And I'm not saying all this to discourage you. I'm just saying this to kind of inform you. This is usually how it goes, right? The boss wants you to get paid more because they'll know that you'll do better work and, you'll be easier to deal with, blah, 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 right? So that's kind of what's going on here. So knowing all of this, okay, the question is, how do you convince the boss to give you more money, right? Now, you can threaten to leave. You could say look, you need to give me more money or else I'm going to leave, right? Now, I can tell you from experience, a lot of people do that. And in 90% of the cases, it's a bluff. They're not going to leave. They don't have any other job lined up. They're just saying it as a way of trying to persuade you to to do the thing they want you to do, right? So what a lot of bosses will do is they'll call your bluff. They'll say, okay, well, sorry, I don't have any more money. If you want to stay here, your salary stays the same. Or, I'm sorry, it's been nice having you here. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. It's clear that this job is kind of beneath you now. So best of luck. Shall we say 4 weeks notice? Right. So any bluff you give, you need to allow that your bluff could be called. Okay. And the way I've seen this work out is that what they do is they allow the employee to leave and they go, oh, okay, they were serious. Okay, well, they are a valuable employee. So the day after they leave, I'm going to call them at home. I'm going to say, okay, come on back. I can give you more money. That's what I've seen. Because it wasn't a bluff, because the employee actually is really good, and you know it. Okay, so this is kind of the situation. So I can't answer what you should do in your particular situation. I don't know where you work. I don't even know what country you're in. So, but hopefully that should inform and point you in the right direction what you might need to do. Okay, did I skip over any questions here? Answered that. Okay. My good buddy Joey Joe here. Kevin Roble says, hey, Bill, I got a verbal offer, but until now, I don't have the paperworks. They are working on it, but I feel hanging. Sorry if topic is a bit off, but anyway, can you advise? By the way, Bill, you are awesome. Thank you very much, Kevin. That's very high praise. I appreciate that. Listen, until it's in writing, it doesn't exist, okay? So what I mean by that is like, okay, this is very encouraging and you should feel positive about this. And, it's a really good sign, okay? But it's not over yet. It's not in the bag, okay? It could all disappear at any moment, okay? So just be aware of that. So don't act on this yet, okay? As soon as, if they call you and say they need you to do something, like, come over here and, or go and take these steps and give us all this information, like, the correct response is like, sure, listen, as soon as you send me the paperwork for the offer, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. So if you can get that to me today, then I can start the process after I get it, right? It's very simple, okay? Some people, they might be, like, not to always have such a suspicious mind, but I mean, I've encountered all these situations before. They'll string you along with promises to get you to do a bunch of stuff for them, when really they have no intention of delivering upon their promises. Now, you don't know. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe that's not what's going on. I hope it's not what's going on. A lot of the time it isn't. But you got to protect yourself. And, you know what I mean? And any reasonable professional person on the other end will know this. They will not expect you to do a bunch of risky things on your side in exchange for nothing in writing. You know what I mean? They'll recognize that that's not a reasonable ask, right? So so that's what's going on so far. This jumped on me here. Okay, so this was Kevin Robles. So that's my advice. Like, it's great, be positive and friendly with them and everything, but if they do ask you for anything, just make sure you tell them, yeah, sure, as soon as you send me the paperwork, you got it. I will do all those things. But you don't do anything until you get any kind of paperwork. Pearl, during a technical interview, I was tested in 3 different subfields of civil engineering termed as competency areas. Okay. Later during the interview, I was asked, which area of professional competence do you see yourself developing over the next few years? Okay. Well, my gut instinct would be to answer all of them. I have no objection in going to, like, I have a certain amount of flexibility. I'm passionate about civil engineering. These are all areas that I've studied. These are all areas that I'm interested in developing. They all have potential to go into very exciting, very cutting edge areas where you could do a lot of work and do a lot of good, you know? So I'm not going to like pick one and say this is the only area I'm interested in, because it's not. You know what I mean? What they're trying to do with this is they're really trying to, see like something about you. And it is possible for them to like get an answer. They say, you can't proceed until you pick one of these areas or something. I would make it clear that like, look, I'm passionate and flexible and competent in all these areas. And, wherever the demand is, I will go, because I think that, these are all interesting things, I would try and keep it open as much as possible. Now, if they were to challenge you on that, I would be able to back it up and say, well, I'm interested in this area because, it can go into this application and you could, provide a lot of value in this industry doing this. I know there's going to be a lot of development around that in the next 10 years in this application. I'm interested in this area because you could, it can be applied here in particular. And I know that that's like a hot area. There's a lot of innovation around, and people are doing some very exciting things in terms of solving this problem, which makes this now possible. So that's really cool. And so on, right? Like each area, I would have like a backup answer, like a story behind it. So if they press you, you can put your money where your mouth is and say like, look, I'm not just saying this. I mean, this is what I'm interested in, right? That's what I would do. Unless, of course, genuinely you're not interested in one of these areas, I mean, if you really aren't, then you may, if they offered you a job in that area specifically, would you take it? If you wouldn't take it, then, then I would answer honestly and say, well, I'm interested in other things more than this, right? Joey Joe says, I add more contracts for the company, thereby ensuring the company have contracts for the next 3 years, but he just ignores these. Okay. Well, you got two problems there, don't you, Joey? You've got the problem where they're not paying you as much as you feel, but on top of that, it seems like you have issues with your boss. Your boss doesn't appreciate or doesn't recognize the good work you're doing. Because if your boss came up to you and complimented you and said like, hey, great job, like getting these contracts with these customers, or these clients, you are, of all the salespeople or of all the, whatever people in this department, you're the one that brings in the most contracts or brings in the most business by volume, and I appreciate you. I think you're a great employee. If your boss said something like that, but didn't give you any more money, then that would be one issue. But you've got this additional issue where you've got an issue with your boss. So it's not really about the fact they don't pay you enough. It's about your boss doesn't see your value, right? So it's not really a question of money. It's a question of like, what's going on with this boss. Now, there's a couple of possibilities. Maybe the boss is an idiot. That's the obvious possibility. Another option is that you're not as valuable as you think you are, or they care about something else, maybe for whatever reason, the boss just assumes that you're going to get the contracts anyway. Any salesperson or any worker would get those contracts, so they accept that as a given. And what they look at different things, how friendly are you with them or something like that. Maybe they pay much more attention to that. I don't know. Maybe there's some other thing that they value that's different from what you value or what you see as your value. So if that's something that's worth pursuing, you might want to ask them about it and just say, hey, I got a question. What's the most valuable thing when we're interacting with these clients or whatever you do? Is it the fact that we get the contract, or is it a fact that they have a positive experience? Like, what's the most important factor that we could influence, like I could influence? What's a sign of a good employee in this role to you as opposed to a bad employee? What's the difference there? Because maybe they'll say something different than what you're expecting. You might think they'll say like, well, a good employee is someone who brings in the most contracts. But maybe instead they say something else. They say like, oh, a good employee is someone that the client tells me they enjoy dealing with, or something like that. You know what I mean? So you might want to ask your boss some questions like this to kind of understand their possibly twisted way of looking at it. And then that also gives you an idea of what you need to do, right? It gives you an idea of what it would take to convince this person that, you're one of the better employees or something. You know what I mean? Okay. And then if you can crack that nut, if you can fix that problem, then that gives you it leads into like what you would have to do to get a raise out of this person, if that's even a possibility. Shardul Pandit says, hello, thanks. Continuing the previous question. Okay, this was the 4 panelist question. All 4 panelists are scientists, and one of them is a hiring manager. I gave technical PowerPoint in my first round. Do I have to prepare again for the new PowerPoint? Okay, listen, I don't know what the situation is. I don't know what, your understanding of everything is, but usually when you get to this point, certainly a second interview, okay? Even for scientists, job interviews are not really about the technical stuff. I know that seems like a huge surprise and a contradiction, but it's true. It doesn't matter how gifted somebody is or where they've done their research or how bright they are or anything like that. If you can't work with them, it's going to be a problem. Okay, you could be the most brilliant person who ever lived, but if you can't communicate, you can't collaborate with anybody, it's a non-starter, period, right? So obviously the person you have to impress the most is your hiring manager, okay? Like that's the person that you really have to convince. If you convince them, the hard work is done. All you have to do is get the others to concur, right? So you be tuned into the hiring manager. Don't get distracted by possibly more extrovert people in that panel. You focus on the hiring manager, and they'll probably ask you a bunch of technical stuff, right? But don't be fooled, like it's all about like the impression you make. If you're someone that is enthusiastic about being there, that's what they look for. If you're someone that wants to work there and this is what you want to do and this is your idea of success, it isn't a case of like, you had some other career path in mind, but then they kind of scooped you off this way to the side to kind of see if you're interested in doing this and you're still kind of not really into this, right? You want to be here and you want to click personally with the people that you're going to be dealing with, most importantly, the hiring manager. You have to get along as people. You have to convince them like, oh, dealing with you is going to be easy. If they hire you, you're going to be easy to deal with. You can communicate well. You might have the same sense of humor if that even comes up. Stuff like that. Stuff like that matters. It really does. Even in this setting. Because there's a lot of qualified people out there. Right? If they're just looking for qualified people, they got a whole stack of resumes. They can find people that are qualified. Everybody they interview on paper is qualified, right? So the interviews are for 2 things. Number 1, to just give them proof that everything on your resume is not a fabrication, right? They ask you maybe a couple of technical questions about the work you've done. You can hold your own. It shows like, oh yeah, you do know about this. Okay. But more than that, it's who you are as a person. Are you friendly? Can they relate to you? Can they communicate with you? Do your answers make sense? If you answer in a way that makes them feel awkward all the time and makes them not really understand what you're saying, that's going to be a problem because this is like a preview of what it's going to be like to work with you. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it's a bit of a dilemma because on the one hand, you think, well, I don't want to go in there and seem like desperate and seem too eager for something. So sometimes people play, they play it a little arrogantly. They go, oh yeah, I'm so qualified. I'm so far qualified above this, right? Like you really got a winner here. Or they feel they need to show confidence and stuff, and it comes across as arrogance and stuff like this. what they're looking for is someone that, thinks working with them is awesome. They'd love to do this work and they want to work with them and they get along well with them. So that should inform your decisions of how you're going to do this. Okay. Now you're asking about a PowerPoint. Do I have to prepare again for the new PowerPoint? Well, that would go back to what instructions did they give you? Did they tell you to prepare anything? If you think there's a chance they could ask you to present something, I would do the work, right? So you come prepared. Now, if they ask you for it, great. If they don't, oh well. But at least they didn't catch you off guard, right? Or catch you unprepared. So if there's a chance that they could ask you to do another presentation, I would come prepared, right? If this is something that you're serious about, I would do it. Okay, hopefully it's not too much work. I don't know if this really applies, but I'm just going to say this. For me, I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint presentations that go on forever. They're very intricate. I would much rather put up like one slide that doesn't move. Instead of like a deck of like 30 slides that you're kind of like, going through and reading it off the screen. I would just put up one slide. It has like 3 or 4 words on it and then just speak about it. So the focus is on you rather than on your PowerPoint. That's how I do these things. And it's far more engaging for the audience. I can't tell you how many extremely boring PowerPoint presentations I've had to sit through that are just like, it's like you feel the seconds of your life ticking away. So make it come alive. If you do present something, you don't have to prepare a lot of work like in PowerPoint. Just make it come alive with what you're saying. If you know your stuff, that shouldn't be too hard. Kevin Roble says, also, I asked the hiring manager, what is the roadmap of the organization? And they said there's no roadmap yet. I was asked what would be my plans in the long term. How do I answer this knowing what? I was asked what would be my plans in the long term. How do I answer this knowing they are unclear? Well, if they can't tell you what their plans are, but they ask you your plans for, like, okay, Kevin Robles, this was like the verbal offer thing. I got a verbal offer, but now I don't have the paperwork. They're working on it, but I feel hanging. Yeah, okay, well, it looks like it's not over yet. They're still interviewing you, right? This is pretty clear if they're asking you questions like this. Well, look, okay, they're not willing to tell you anything that they're doing or they're going to be doing, but they want you to tell them what your plans are. So this is, if someone asked me that, this is what I would say. Okay, I'd say, well, I'm very excited about your company. I'm very excited about doing this type of work. I think this is a tremendous opportunity. And I think that this type of work, it can go in several different directions that would, benefit the end user. There's a lot of things you could do with this. Now, my plans would be to support the company in whichever direction you guys want to go. Now, right now, as it stands, I don't have a super detailed picture of like what your plans are as we go into the future. But, my plans would be to stay here and to support whatever that is, because I could envision several ways this could go, and that's about as much detail as I can give you at this juncture. My long-term plan is to be in this industry, to do this kind of work, and this supports it. So, that's about all I can say at this point. Hopefully that makes sense. Something like that, you're not putting anything down. You're not limiting yourself. You're not saying anything that could signal that, you got a problem with anything or that something is off limits. Right? So that's the deal. There's 25 of you guys here. Get in the chat and let me know your questions. I see there's some stuff going on. There's some stuff on this screen here that is not in my feed, which is kind of interesting. Okay, I can't help but notice that we got a couple of extra questions there. So I have to read. It's very small, but Shardul says, "Thanks, Bill, for your answer. What kind of questions are generally expected in an on-site interview, behavioral or technical or HR?" Well, they could ask any of those. I mean, depending on, like, you're talking about a face-to-face interview where you physically have to go and interview with them. I mean, it could be all of those, right? They usually ask all of those. They're going to ask you behavioral questions. Like if there's a recruiter involved, they will ask you behavioral questions. If there's a hiring manager involved, they will probably, they have the ability to ask you technical questions because I understand the technicalities of the job, right? If it's an on-site, like when you say on-site, are they giving you a tour, or is it just that you're just going for a regular job interview? If they're giving you a tour, which sometimes happens, I've been on job interviews where, like, they give you an interview and then they give you a tour afterwards. It helps to be able to ask a couple of intelligent questions about some of the things you see, right? Don't just wander through the tour going, oh, interesting. It's like, oh, I see you're using this machine. Does it have this capability? Something like that, right? That shows you're kind of A, interested, B, you have some, practical knowledge, right? You're asking intelligent things that show that you know your stuff, right? So I don't know if that enters into it, but Shardul says, "Thank you so much. It is really helpful." Good. Joey Joe says, "Well, he dodges meeting with clients. He's kind of afraid to deal with them. Maybe I should look for a change." It sounds like you've got some issues with your boss. You don't respect this guy. You don't think much of him. So, I mean, look, you've got a couple of options here. Sometimes leaving is the right thing to do. Okay. Sometimes it isn't. If you've got a good thing going, it might be worth trying to salvage the situation. And if you're stuck with this boss, it might be worth trying to make some kind of smoother relationship kind of flow there. And the way you do that is go by talking to the guy, going up and saying, like, "Hey, can I ask, just help me understand, like, just so I know what to do. What's more important to you, this or that? What's the most important thing here?" Get an idea of how this person thinks, okay? Because obviously they're doing things that you don't understand. You think, like, it's just out to lunch. Now, maybe this person is an idiot. They don't know what they're doing, but unfortunately, they're your boss. Maybe they're not. Maybe they actually know a bit more about what's going on than you do behind the scenes. They're privy to more behind the scenes information about the business than you are. Maybe their boss has told them that, oh, the most important thing with this is this, and that's different from what you're seeing. So they're going on that. So you don't know what's going on. So it might be worth just having a couple of conversations with them before you decide to leave, just to see if you can understand how they think and if it makes any sense. And if they give you clear direction, this is what I need you to do. This is what's important to me. This is what I need you to do. Right? It might be worth trying to do that. Now, if you try it and it totally fails miserably and it's a bad experience, and there's no way you could get this working in a way that makes sense for you, then maybe start looking for another job, just on the DL while you're working there. I don't know. That could be the way it has to go. This is going to depend on all kinds of factors I don't know about you, how old you are, where you are in your career, the nature of the work. Is the industry growing? Is it contracting? Is it mature? What other opportunities there are for you? Like, all these other factors you got to take into account. So I can't answer it for you, but it might be worth trying to salvage before you just decide to jump ship. Considering how easy it is to try and do this and how, little time and effort it takes. Yeah, you see, my feed hasn't moved at all, but the feed on the screen is moving, so that's just weird and stupid. I don't like Streamlabs OBS. So this writing is very small, so I can't see these names very clearly. Martingale sang on a moonless night, that kind of thing. Do you got any tips? I don't know, but I might have some tips on getting a job that prefers people with experience without any experience. Do you have any tips on getting a job that prefers people with experience without any experience? Okay, well, generally, if you're going through a recruiter, the number one metric that recruiters use to assess the supposed value of a candidate is years of experience. So that's what they look for. Okay. Now I did a video that I think is really good that like nobody watched. It's one of the latest videos on my channel. It's called How to Get a Job with No Experience. And I directly address that. So check out that video because I answer it better there than I could off the top of my head here. Okay. But there are ways of getting a job without experience. There's a lot of ways of getting a job without experience. Most of them involve some form of networking. Networking is where you reach out to somebody, when they haven't posted a job, right? It's just a place you would like to work. And they're not looking to hire anyone. They haven't posted any job postings, but you reach out anyway and you say like, hey, I'd love to work for you guys. If ever you're looking for someone who can do this, let me know. It's a very low pressure kind of situation. So that's what I'd recommend you learn how to do if you're not already doing that. Because here's the thing, you may not have a ton of work experience. Okay. But what you do have is you have a lot of passion to do this kind of work, and you're very professional in that you've reached out to this company. You've done it in a professional way. You've said a professional thing. Okay. You also have shown initiative. Okay. You haven't just sat around and waited for somebody to tell you what to do. You went and did this non-standard thing yourself. Okay. Now, if you're going to reach out to a company, that signals that you actually do care about working there. You want to work there. You're not going to do this to a company you don't care about working for at all, right? That's why people like volunteering experience. If you do volunteering, everybody likes that on a resume because that signals what you really care about. Like, you're not going to volunteer for something you don't want to do, right? They're not paying you, so why would you do it? You volunteer for stuff that you want to do, that you get satisfaction in doing. Usually some kind of charitable type work, right? You volunteer for that. They don't have to pay you to do it because you're getting a different type of reward. You're getting like a good feeling. You're getting the feeling of giving back and helping people and all this kind of stuff. So when you reach out to a company proactively, and say, hello, I'm here, I do this. I'd love to work for you. I know you guys do this kind of work. And I know you do a great job. If ever you're looking, just let me know. No pressure. That says a lot about you. Okay. And that trumps experience in a lot of situations. Yeah, you don't have a lot of experience, but you're the only one that showed up, the only one that's truly passionate about doing this work and that has proved it. Right. So that counts for something. Okay. That's how you break the tie. Like, it's like the catch-22 of like, I don't have experience, so no one will hire me, but no one will hire me because I don't have experience, right? Like, it's like a catch-22. That's how you break that cycle. You break it by showing something that no one else has. You're the one that reached out and did this. None of those other people did. You did. That separates you from all of them. That shows how superior you are to all of them in a couple of ways. And this is one of them. Okay, so does that make sense? So learn about that. I've got a lot of videos on my channel. There's a lot of resources elsewhere also. Learn about that type of activity. Don't just do the thing where you apply for posted jobs, because when you do that, most jobs like that, they get hundreds of applicants. Lots of people send in their resumes. So you're going in with 100 other people, 200 other people. It's hard to elevate yourself above the crowd when you're going up against 200 other people, right? But when you do this stuff, you're the only one that did this. So the question is, should they pursue this with you or not? That's the only question that's relevant to them. Okay? So figuring out who to talk to, how to talk to them, and what to say are your next sort of, things you need to learn to do this. Okay, now my feed is moved, so it's now in sync with the one on the screen there. Okay, Martindale says, "Oh, sorry, thank you." Okay, no problem, Martingale. MS, my offer's been stuck for 4 weeks at board of big tech company. Should I be concerned? Well, look, not knowing anything about this job or the role or the company or the situation, I would say it's a no. Usually if your offer has been stuck for 4 weeks, that's usually a no. That's usually a sign it's not happening. See, it might not be. I don't know for a fact. Okay, I'm just making a guess. But usually the way this works is recruiters, in the way that they communicate with candidates, generally speaking, I find them to be quite spineless. They won't tell you the truth. They won't be honest with you, and they'll lie straight to your face in order to avoid an awkward conversation. Okay? Now, on one hand, I kind of understand why they're doing this, because they got a lot of people to deal with, and you can't get into an argument with every person you deal with. It just is impractical. On the other hand, it's just not a professional way to conduct yourself. It represents the company very badly. Okay? And usually what they do is, instead of saying, no, sorry, we've passed on you, is they'll say, well, it's on hold. The job's on hold, or your application is on hold for a while, or, something of that nature. That's usually a very common thing that they'll say. That's code for no, right? Without actually saying no, right? So they don't have to deal with an angry candidate that's just felt rejected and felt like, they're angry and they're disappointed. They don't want to deal with that. So they just avoid the entire conversation by saying, well, it's on hold, and then they never have to talk to you again. They won't take your calls. That's usually how it goes. So there's maybe a possible test to see what's going on here is if you call your contact and see if they'll take your calls. And what I would recommend is, if it were me, I would call, if like the contact, if it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, I would call them and say, hi, it's me. I'm just following up to see if there was any progress on, my offer, or, any news on how this, if you guys are filling this position, and, if I'm moving forward or not. And if they say, oh, well, we don't know anything, I say, okay, well, do you know when you will have news? And if it's like they give you some answer far in the future, or they don't give you an answer, it's probably a no. I would just keep moving on. Always be looking forward, never be looking backward. It's best for your results, and it's best for your mental health. Okay? That's what I would say. Hopefully it's not a no, but just be prepared. Be moving on anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, always be thinking about, what new opportunities can I apply for? Can I put myself forward for? What new networking opportunities can I is there companies that I can contact? I would focus on the next step. Never sit and wait by the phone for it to ring. Okay? You'll get more done. You'll make more things happen, and you won't be as depressed. You'll be much more hopeful, which you should be. This process is very nerve-wracking, and it can be very stressful. And like I've mentioned many times, we're at one of the lowest points in our lives when we're between jobs and we feel rejected. We got rejected. A lot of people aren't used to this. Unless you've been in sales or something, you're not used to this. And it really stings. And you add to that the uncertainty about, money, or about, what's going to happen in the future. where you're going to live, if that's, like, do I have to move for my job or do I stay here? I don't know where I'm going to be. It's very stressful, and it's largely an illusion, like how bad you feel, because things get better. They do get better. You wait, a certain number of weeks and poof, it's all over and, you're doing fine. Right. But it just, when you're in this place, it feels like it's the end of the world. It feels like everything's black and bleak and bad. And that's all an illusion, So my point is that you got to do stuff to keep your spirits up, and dwelling on waiting for people to get back to you about this and always thinking about it, that doesn't help. I know it's easier said than done, but as much as possible, what makes you feel hopeful and what makes you feel optimistic about the future is working on future opportunities, applying for more jobs, doing more networking stuff. That will, make you feel better about what's going to happen tomorrow, right? If you have 3 interviews lined up, maybe the first one doesn't go great, you don't feel too bad about it because you got 2 more lined up. You know what I mean? It's that principle. So always have stuff lined up if you can. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, it is, we're just over the hour mark, so I'm going to start wrapping this up soon unless I get a flood of questions coming in. Yeah, thank you to the 24 people that are here. Like I've mentioned before, if you are just, you're just getting into the whole job search thing, you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to network, you don't know how to, how the whole thing fits together. I do have a course. It's a solution for a lot of people. If that sounds like it might be a solution for you, check it out. The link is in the description. I've done videos on how my courses work, what you get, what they talk about. There's all kinds of stuff on there that describes what it is. So if that's something that you're interested in, check it out. No pressure. A lot of people have bought both those courses. I need to do a third one. There's a third one I want to do about written communication skills. I've been talking about this for a year, and I really got to get on the ball and do it. But but I have 2 courses right now, so check those out if either of those would be interesting. The first one, Get Hired, talks about how to get hired. The second one talks about, business. It's basically how to learn business. So if you're interested in either of those things, check them out. There's a link in the description. I'm also here once a week. I do this live stream once a week, how to get hired, just a general Q&A on anything to do with the hiring process. And I also do another live stream called Side Hustle Ideas. I just did one this morning. Not a lot of people in that one. The last 2 weeks, there's been a sort of less people in that one, but I actually look forward to that one because I like that topic. I've helped a lot of people start businesses and lead them to success. So it's a topic I'm very interested in. So I'm doing those. I will be doing more in the leadership series also. Not this week, maybe next week. I will do a third episode of that. So if you're interested in that, that talks more if you have ambitions to be an executive or some kind of business leader, it talks about what you do at higher levels of management, some of the skills involved, some of the strategies, techniques, that kind of stuff. So I also will be doing that. So several people have asked for that, so I will do more. And there you go. Other than that, I'm here. And once again, this feed has stopped, and I see that there's some more questions on the screen, so I will just look at that. Martingale says, if you were right now 19, I can't even picture that, and finished high school, what would you do to enhance your career chances? Okay, here's what I would do. And this is advice. And you know how advice is things that you didn't do that you're telling other people they should do, right? I didn't learn about business. I didn't learn about being professional, just acting professionally, dressing professionally, talking professionally, conducting yourself professionally. I didn't really do any of that stuff when I was young, when I was like in my 20s for sure. And the reason for it was because I didn't respect that. I didn't think it was important. And who knows? I mean, the problem with old people giving advice to young people sometimes is that, like, you know, it might be good for old people to act that way, but is it right? Is it appropriate for a 20-year-old to act that way? I don't know. You know, 20-year-olds are concerned with other things. 20-year-olds are concerned with, like, you know, romantic relationships and, you know, what they want to do with their life and, you know, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, they got other things. They're not worried about their career, you know? That's more middle-aged and old people. I kind of talk about that stuff. So, you know, in a perfect world, I would have done my whole career 10 years earlier than I actually did it. You know, because like a lot of people, I kind of went down a couple of dead ends first before you find the path that like really takes you, that you're going to be on for the rest of your life. Right. So, and don't be fooled by how young and pretty I look. You know, I'm actually quite old. And, you know, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you can act professionally, you can speak professionally, you can write professionally, you have a respect for people who do. You don't regard them as like, oh, they're just a bunch of squares and suits and, you know, they're just lame and they're not cool and they're not fun. And I don't want to ever be like that. You know, like I had too much of that when I was younger. I wasn't one of these people that came out of school like wearing a suit when you're 18 years old. It's like, nope. You know, so I would maybe change my attitude. I have a respect more for that kind of thing, for speaking properly, conducting yourself properly. And in particular, for me, it was like learning business, because I find that business is like a reality. When you learn like how to build a business, you're like, this is reality. You're not in a school where they give you rules, like artificial rules, because most young people's lives are like education. You're in the school system in some shape or form. You know, either that or you jump out into like some crappy job. You know, a lot of people find themselves in that situation. And then things just suck and you don't understand why. But if you come from the educational system, it's filled, in my experience and what I observe, it's filled with a bunch of rule crazy people that, you know, they tell you this is how it is and this is what you need to do. And, you know, a lot of that isn't based on anything real. It's just their imaginations. And they give you a distorted view of how the world works. You know, work hard and you'll go far. You know, it's like, well, is that what you see? Do you see like all the people that succeed? Are those the ones that work the hardest? No. You know, there's a lot of factors there and it's complicated. And there's a place for you in the real world. If you didn't fit in the educational system or in the established world, you know, or like, this is why I do the live streams on Monday about side hustles and about starting businesses, because maybe you're a really smart person. Maybe you've got a lot of value, but you're not a great employee. You know what I mean? Your boss is an idiot. Your company is doing stupid things. You know, they assess your value based on idiotic criteria. You know, and usually it's idiots that are doing this, but they judge you and they say, oh, you know, you're only this good, right? The great thing about the real world is that like you can get out, you can make a custom kind of solution that fits you and you can use it to make money. So that takes care of your livelihood. And if you play your cards right, you can turn whatever hobby or passion you might have into the thing that makes you money. So it's also creatively satisfying. So that takes care of your creative hobby kind of passion side. You know what I mean? How many people tell this to kids in school? How many people say that this is like what you could do? And then they draw you a map and they say, okay, well, if you want to do that, here's what you got to learn and here's what you got to do. Nobody does that. I've never seen that done. You know? oh, sure, they teach like these programs that supposedly prepare you, but they're taught by people who haven't done that stuff themselves and don't know. You know what I mean? So I would have tuned more into that stuff, you know, and I wouldn't have just believed these people who really have never been out in the real world themselves, people that were students and then they became the teachers without like ever going out in the real world. Like, what the hell do you know about anything? Okay. Now, if you're there to learn math, great. You learn your math. They'll teach you math. But anything else about like life or about where your career could go and what skills will be needed and, you know, what the hell would they know? You know what I mean? I mean, even I know I haven't seen a lot of things, the vast majority of stuff that goes on out there. There's a lot going on out there, you know? You know what I mean? So the sooner you get out and you can like get answers to questions, you know, if you want to know about how something works, go out and find answers to it. Whatever it is you're interested in. You know, like that's what I wish someone had told me. So anyway, that was kind of a weird question, but there you go. MS, what do you think about remote work in 2023? Our company won't allow it anymore, but we are doing very well. I've already talked about that, like in shorts and things that came out this week on my channel. The bottom line is, like, look, if you're a knowledge worker, okay, that means like you work basically with information. You sit at a desk, you deal with a computer, a phone, you know what I mean? You can do your job from anywhere, right? And the problem is, in large organizations, you have people that are knowledge workers, right? Anyone who sits in an office with a desk and a phone and a computer, you're a knowledge worker. So you can do all that work anywhere. You could do it from home. And it makes a lot of sense sometimes to do it from home because, for one, you don't have to commute, right? Like, so your day is substantially shorter for a start. You don't have to, you know, consume money for gas and deal with cars and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And, you know what I mean? You're also, like, there's other advantages too. You know, it's a better work environment sometimes if you can tailor your environment at home to like doing your job. So it makes sense. The problem is a lot of big companies, not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't like this because the simple reason they want you at work has nothing to do with how productive you are at work. It's because they don't trust you. They want to be able to look over your shoulder, monitor everything you're doing, and make sure that you're working. And they can't do that from home. And that's a simple fact. They don't like it. They want people that they can watch over. They want to stand there with a whip and just like a policeman and look over your shoulder, watch what you're doing, and take you to task when you're not working as long or as hard as they feel you need to, right? It's not about results. It's about the process. Okay. So companies like that will fight remote work tooth and nail just on principle, right? It has nothing to do with the productivity. It's to do with the principle of like, you know, we don't trust our employees. The other thing is that it does introduce some complexities when it comes to collaboration, and it does introduce complexities when it comes to security. Like if you're accessing a company database and stuff, it makes it a little more complicated. You're not on site. You have to connect in remotely and all this stuff and share resources across, you know, people's like home networks and, you know, like whatever. So it does, they have a legitimate kind of point when they talk about that stuff sometimes. It's not the end of the world. You could overcome that. But it's just that they're not set up right now to do that because they never intended to do business like that in the first place. So they're having to like sort of go back and scramble to like make it happen. And they really weren't counting on the fact that this would become a thing, because that's what the problem is now. Now employees are expecting it. So if you're putting yourself up, you're saying, I'm looking for a job and I'm a in-demand employee. That's, you know, I'm one of the good employees with lots of experience, lots of capabilities, but I demand that I work like 2 days a week from home or 4 days a week, you know, whatever it is. They weren't planning on that. That's throwing them for a loop. So they're what they want to do is just say absolutely not. but they find that when they do that, they can't attract a lot of top talent. So they're having to give concessions, and it's driving them insane. So that's kind of what's going on now. I don't know which way it's going to go. They could really bite down hard and dig their heels in and stop this trend, or they could just sort of roll over and surrender to it. I don't know which way it's going to go. So we'll see. I think the problem is that in some areas, they're losing that battle. In other areas, they're winning it, depending on what industry you're in, what country, where the economy is hotter or colder, So, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't make predictions about that. And there you go. That's the last of the questions. Okay. Well, thank you to the 31 people that are here. You guys are awesome. You're the ones that are trying to improve yourselves and learn kind of the principle behind this whole process. So I wish you the very best of luck. I'm here every week for these live streams, and there's a ton of videos and stuff on my channel, so check those out. But I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for joining me. You guys are great, and I will see you next week. Take care.